You probably heard me say it 8,000 times by now, but Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers was one of the best Final Fantasy experiences I've ever had. In fact, it might have been the best. I legitimately did not think it was possible for an MMORPG to tell one of the most compelling Final Fantasy stories that I've ever seen. But the journey is not over yet, my friends. We still have Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, which honestly is my most anticipated game of the entire year. And in a recent interview with the game's producer and director, Naoki Yoshida, we have even more reason to be excited. In an interview with PC Gamer, Naoki Yoshida was asked how Endwalker's story content compares to that of Shadowbringers, to which Yoshida replied, quote, "In a simple comparison between the two, I would say the amount of cutscenes has increased by 1.3 times more. This means that we're looking at 30% more story content in Endwalker than we had in Shadowbringers." And of course that makes sense because they have a lot of story threads to wrap up. At least, that is to conclude the Hydaelyn Zodiark saga. Yoshida continued by saying, quote, "When we were looking at it, I honestly thought it would be too big. It was too much, and it would become critical on our schedule. So I considered if we needed to shave off some of the plot that's being unraveled in there. But considering how we'd have to make more adjustments to shave off any parts of the story, that would mean even more work. I made the decision to push forward with what we have." You know, it's funny, we oftentimes think about developers cutting content, but we don't really normally think about how they actually have to go back and reorganize and restructure the story for all the things that they cut. And so funny enough, in this case, it was actually faster to just go ahead with what they already had, rather than trying to condense it for story purposes. And honestly, I'm so glad that we're going to be getting the full unabridged story. But that's not all. Yoshida has also given us a tease for what 7.0 and beyond could offer, with him saying, quote, "With the 10-year plus history, we were able to tie up a lot of loose ends, and with the climax there will be more questions that are answered, and people will understand the reasoning behind a lot of things that have been presented throughout the story. With that said, there are areas within the planet Hydaelyn where we haven't explored yet. There are continents that have yet to be discovered, areas that have yet to be explored. There's possibilities there, and with the story of Shadowbringers, we learn that the Crystal Tower acts as a portal not just to distant realms, including the first, and those have been divided by the Sundered, but it can also allow us to travel in time as well as go back to the past and future as well. So there's still a lot of possibilities left. They could pretty much go in any direction they want to at this point. It's really exciting, and it shows that we have so much Final Fantasy XIV ahead of us. However, some people are assuming that with 7.0, it could be some sort of reboot for the story. And while it may be some sort of soft reboot, don't expect any sort of hard reboot. With Yoshida saying, quote, "We have no intention of negating all that has happened in the story. We don't want to negate the adventure that you went on, the characters that you met along the way, and the achievements that you've accomplished throughout your journey. So when we are looking to that transition and moving forward to the next chapter of that story, it's safe to assume that this is still taking place in the same universe, so to speak. 7.0 won't be a full reset in terms of all the things that we did and all the people that we've seen, so don't expect it to go that far." As far as preparing for Endwalker, Yoshida had this to say, "By now, I'm sure you're familiar with characters like Laha Brea and Elidibus, but they've been around for a long time. Some of the dialogue that they said might carry a different meaning after experiencing what you know from Shadowbringers and going back and revisiting earlier parts of the story. Maybe another key thing to look out for is when Hydaelyn calls out to you, and how many times she's called upon you. Also, on job quests, some people might have skipped over them, but there are going to be a lot of characters that are going to make an appearance in Endwalker, and that might be a good place to look at from a story experience as well. Endwalker and the new story that's said to be introduced with 6.1 onward all has me really excited, and you can see all of that excitement live by heading on over to twitch.tv/thenightskyprince, where tonight I'm going to be playing through 5.55 and doing more of the Omega raids. It seems like I might just be fighting Kefka pretty soon, so be sure to check it out with the link in the description below. Shout out to patron Liam Bolton and the rest of the Ultima community.